Let's get started. Thanks, we're recording, and welcome everybody here today. And our special guest, Josh Becker, is going to be first on our agenda, addressing the club about the election, about his service, or we want to thank him for all of his service as we're leaving his district because of the redistricting. And so it's our opportunity to say thank you and goodbye, and don't forget about us.
Well, and don't forget about me. Yeah. I'm just glad, we were sort of joking about this, like, do I get a farewell, with the team? And certainly I've just really enjoyed representing Sunnyvale. I've really enjoyed being part of this club, and from getting to spend time with all of you. Some, Steve I knew for years, others I met really just through the club. And but yeah, I see a lot of folks I consider good friends here on this call. And as I said, this club, and again, I think that the city overall is very well run. The club is also just one of the most sort of functional, thoughtful. The topics are always interesting, relevant, and I've learned a lot from them. From the meetings here, even on healthcare, really changed my views from what the Sunnyvale Dems did on healthcare, and from the discussion about local issues to state and national issues. It's just been tremendous. So it is going to be certainly a loss for me in not representing Sunnyvale, but I'm glad that I was able to come on here and just say quickly, on the national level, have you guys met since the election? Is this the first month since election?
Yeah.
So who's happy? Who's fired up?
Woohoo!
Right? You need like a celebration. It's incredible, and it's easy to forget. It could have gone so off the rails. It could have gone so in the opposite direction. I remember I was so anxious. I literally couldn't function for a couple of days. I was just so anxious. And if you think of what could happen in the Senate, what could happen with election deniers, what could happen with crazy governors and state legislatures across the country. Oh, you get the loop.
Yeah.
You got it, Kara? Yeah, okay. You're meeting one of them. And just from a tremendous organizing effort across the country, and a lot of folks here writing into districts across the country, that we avoided the worst of those outcomes, and actually will hold on to the Senate for sure, hopefully with an extra seat. And the extra seat's important because that gives subpoena power. That means you're also not, subject to being, a gun to your head from Joe Manchin on climate issues, or Kristen Sinema, whatever is, her issue of the day on private equity taxation, for example. So it's really significant. So I just got back from Georgia, and I had a meeting there. So I was watching a workforce panel on computer science education. But I said, if I'm here, I'm going to campaign for Raphael Warnock. So I spent time campaigning for Raphael Warnock, and it was really it was a lot of fun for me just to be part of that. And it was with the DeKalb County Democrats. I met one of the new state House leaders, House members who had just gotten elected, and just to see all the volunteers. And it reminded me of this group, actually. It was just a really real family atmosphere and a great group of folks. And it was a lot of fun. Yes, that I saw a comment come up about protecting the map from 24. So that's an important piece of it. So there's still work to do, but overall we're just in a much better shape than we could have imagined. Big transitions at the leadership level in the House with Nancy Pelosi after her, just incredible. I don't think we can all appreciate just what she's accomplished in 20 years. It's just it's extraordinary. I read a biography of her written a year or two ago, and it's just I learned stuff that I didn't know. It's just came with so much more respect for her, and just the way that she was able to manage the caucus and get things done is just tremendous. But yeah, with her and Steny Hoyer and Jim Clyburn stepping aside, it's really a new day of leadership. I happen to know Hakeem Jeffries quite well, and I'm really excited for him as a potential leader of Democrats in the House. And California will have some continue to have strong reputation. I don't know Pete Aguilar. I don't know if anyone does. I went to a small group thing with him probably about 3 weeks before the election, but I don't know him well. But he'll clearly be in the leadership if that all kind of goes as planned. So it's a time of transition here in California. The election, Democrats, of course, swept all the major offices. The controller race was the one that was somewhat up in the air. And Malia Cohen, who I've known for a long time, I knew since she was confidential secretary to Gavin Newsom in 20 whatever years ago. But an incredible person, just a really infectious energy. It was great to see her triumph. That was really the one that was in question. But and at state level, again, a lot of good things to report. Record success for women in California. We increased by 25% the number of women in the legislature. So it's still not quite a parity, but we went from about 39 to at least 50, which is really significant jump. As I say, in the Senate, it's kind of incredible. In 2018, in the Senate, there was no Latina women in the state Senate. And as of 2020, there was 8. So about 20%, and we could be up to 25%, I think, with this most recent election with Carolyn Menjivar. So it's kind of like things like that. Those are major terms. From 0 to 25% of the state Senate would just be Latina women alone. So we're making a lot of good strides in diversity and representation. Obviously, Prop 1 was a huge win, and I formed my own ballot measure committee because that was so important to me. I said, you know what, we have to win and also win big to set the tone for the rest of the country. But we've 4 other states stepped up with really important abortion rights ballot measures that all went our way, and again also helped drive turnout. I mean, was really responsible, really, for, we should all be honest about that, for the turnout in many of these states. And so a lot of good stuff. I'd say, on the climate front, unfortunately, oil, she still doesn't get a lot of publicity, but oil put in a lot of money, about $6 million just in the last month or so, in a couple of races. And some of my key climate priorities lost, probably my 2 top ones, Sarah Amanzada in Marin, and then Dave Jones in Sacramento. So those were big losses. But we did gain someone like Carolyn Menjivar, sorry, not Carolyn Menjivar, but Catherine Blakespear, state Senate in San Diego. That was a pickup from a Republican seat, and it'll be a purple district, but a coastal purple district means she'll be a very strong environmental vote. And oil spent a lot of money, probably $1 million, $2 million in that race. You will be represented by Isha Wahab, and which you guys endorsed, which is great. I endorsed as well. I actually thought Lily was a strong candidate, but I really liked Aisha. I think she's an extraordinary person. I'm really excited to work with her, and I know she'll be a great representative for Sunnyvale. And yeah, again, I'm just very excited to work with her. And we've got a good crop, not as much turnover. The assembly has a huge turnover. I think 33 new people in the assembly, including Diane Pappin, who I also overlap with in San Mateo County, some of you may know. But the Senate still had significant turnover as well. So we'll have about 25% turnover. So a lot of new faces there. For me, the last 2 years, as many of you know, and we've discussed here, climate's certainly one of my priorities, and it's really kind of amazing. A lot of people referred to last year as the greatest year for climate legislation in California history, and it's because we passed some big picture goals, like my bill to have our state government net zero by 2035 and lead the way with our own fleet, meaning all of our vehicles, with our own buildings, which are a tremendous number of buildings, with our own electricity use as a state. That'll help drive down the costs of all these technologies for everyone else in the state and across the country and across the world. That's the way it works. It's all additive when we all buy into clean energy and new technologies. So, bills like that, we codified carbon neutrality finally after a big loss 2 years ago, came back last year and did that by a significant margin. We had a big, huge environmental justice victory led by Lena Gonzalez and Monique Limon, two colleagues of mine who did a great work in stopping new oil wells near schools and healthcare and other things. It's going to be really significant. In fact, that's one of the things they're going to try to repeal. They're going to try to get that on the ballot and repeal that one. So, we're in for a fight on things like that. But then all my super wonky bills on transmission, on hourly accounting for clean energy, which I won't get into because it's so complicated, but that's going to be incredible impact. We're going to every utility, every load serving, every hour of the day to account for how much energy they use and what percent is clean. And it's a critical milestone on our road to get to 24/7 clean energy. On-bill financing bill for financing electrification and other home energy improvements were some of the things that we did this year. So really, we'll continue to drive on climate, and we'll continue to look for your ideas, because with the House being even narrowly run by Republicans, it just means we're not going to get anything done at the federal level. So we're going to have to keep driving. I know a lot of people are saying, hey, we got a lot done, we can take a break this year. No, we have to keep pushing. And I've got some big ideas around buildings, some big ideas around kind of the emerging space of carbon removal, not carbon capture, but actually carbon removal, trying to create a long-term predictable market, which we're going to need over 23 years now to hit our 2045 goals. So some big ideas about, I want to do solar canopy. So France just mandated solar on all parking lots. My friend in Washington State, Reuben Carlisle, passed a bill around incentives. We'll see if we do incentives or mandate, but I'd like to do something in that area. And we'll continue to push on electrification and just all the pieces of building materials, all the things that we've been that have been working on. So that's been a real pride. The criminal justice stuff has also been equally exciting. Many of you know, one of my biggest bills this year was prison phone calls, free prison phone calls, because it's hard to believe, but there's a multi-billion-dollar prison phone call industry. We've outsourced that, and it's just the public policy aims. We want people to be connected to their loved ones. Instead, we put this huge obstacle, not just money, but the system, the complication of trying to communicate and enter your credit card. It's to go by minute. Nobody pays per minute anymore, but you do if you're in prison. By minute, there's still things to work on. By emails, 5 cents an email is 20 cents a video call. Now, some of that is covered by a bill, not all of that. But to keep our families connected in a way, and stop a system that's driving more families into poverty, because you have many times a breadwinner going to prison, and you have families, 83% led by women, that we're having the burden now of these hundreds of dollars of charges, to keep in touch with loved ones, and a third of the families driven into bankruptcy. So that was, piece of the criminal justice thing. Last year it did the felony murder rule bill. This year I also had a mental health diversion bill that passed, the #1 recommendation of the Committee on Penal Code Reform. LA County Jail is the largest mental health facility in the country. It doesn't help anyone. So we'll continue to push. I'll have a bill I'll probably announce right at the beginning session on parole, part of my parole reform that you'll continue to see from me. Ongoing efforts, because we have 3 times as many people serving life sentences as Texas, even though we're only 25% as large. So we over incarcerate that level. Yes, we need accountability at the basic level, but we're still way over incarcerating, and it's costing us $16 billion a year, which comes into focus again when we have a $20 billion projected budget deficit. So keep pushing on criminal justice reform. Education, really excited some things, education funding locally that I'm hoping I'm going to pull off in San Mateo County with the support of some of the supervisors, and then hopefully we can take that to Santa Clara County as well, which is some of the ERAF money. This gets into wonky stuff, but as our property taxes go up and up and up, that surplus is going to the counties. It's not going to schools where many of us feel like it should go to. If you had a regional cost adjustment on LCFF, which is the amount of funding that all schools that are not basic aid school, that are not community funded schools get, if you had a regional cost adjustment, many more schools in our counties would actually qualify and would be getting that money. But right now there's no regional cost adjustments, so they're considered fully funded. So any excess property tax at the even at the local level goes to our counties, and we don't get to keep that. So San Francisco just passed a ballot measure to reclaim some of that ERAF money. Really is ultimately only a portion, but it still amounts to about $60 million a year that they're going to reclaim of ERAF money for the schools. So I think that's one emerging area, especially in a time of tough budget constraints, to look at, because I don't know the figure in Santa Clara County, but I know in San Mateo County, there's about $350 million more in property taxes than there were even, say, 6 or 7 years ago. And I think more of that should be going to education. So there's some work to do in education, UCs, making sure our UCs stay funded, and we keep freeing up more spots for California kids. Especially again in a budget crunch, UC can get squeezed, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we'll keep pushing on education as well, and just so many other areas that we're fortunate to get to work on in the state Senate. Youth mental health. We had a big push, and a lot of that's also the workforce piece of it. We've now $20,000 grants for to counselors, because we need to grow the mental health profession significantly, just to fill the needs that we have. And other areas that I can go on and on. So I don't want to take the whole meeting, Crystal. I don't know how much time I have. I just want to say, there continues to be really exciting movement at the local level, and with leaders like Linda and Richard. We're going to continue to really drive environmental legislation at the local level. And I'll remind you, Sunnyvale, as you know, is a big city. It was the biggest city in my district by a significant margin. Now the biggest city will be San Mateo, which is about, I think, 105,000, where Sunnyvale's, as you know, about 150. So what happens in Sunnyvale matters very significantly from a climate perspective, and it's just great to see. And I want to do more, hopefully, to connect all of the cities that are leading, to make sure that you're all talking to each other, because I know in part it happens, but I'm told that there's still a real need for that, to make sure we're kind of learning from best practices, especially as we move now into kind of heavy electrification, both of new construction, but now also with existing buildings. We figure out how to get people to afford the benefits, because we know once you have a heat pump, it's more affordable, and you get electricity, which and you get an air conditioning, which we didn't used to need down here, but now oftentimes you need. You get that with a heat pump. Get greenhouse gas free hot water heating, but again, right now a lot of people just can't afford to pay up front, so we have to figure all that out. So lots to do in partnership with the local level. So in closing, I'll just say that I really consider myself part of the American dream. My grandparents came to this country not speaking English, and my parents went to public schools, and public colleges, and with very when we're able to emerge with very little debt, because we didn't have a lot of debt back then. They both went to Temple University in Philadelphia, and as I said, my parents bought the worst house in the best neighborhood, sent us to good public schools growing up. And so I think my job and my sort of guiding metrics will try to make sure to get the American dream to work for everyone in our area. And that's a kid grew up in Sunnyvale, or in Mountain View, or in East Palo Alto, that's first in their family to go to college, to graduate first in their class. That we continue to have clean air and clean water for our kids and grandkids, that we lead the fight against climate change, that we have a more just criminal justice system, that we continue to lead in all these other areas. So I would say it's been a great privilege. I've really enjoyed these meetings, and I hope you'll stay in touch and have me back occasionally.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Don't be a stranger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like it to open it up if anybody wants to make any comments or say your thanks, and maybe just keep it short, but want to open it up a little bit. Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, Josh, I just want to say thank you for serving us. Good job. Look forward to I look forward to what you're going to do next. The biggest issue on is the installed base, if you will, of all the homes
Mhm.
that need heat pumps and stuff. And looking forward to how the heck we're going to do that, because that's a real tough nut.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm working on it. And thank you also, if you're introducing me on mobile home parks, I think we did a lot of good work on mobile home parks the last couple of years, but you'll keep me posted what else we need to do. Richard.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for serving us, Josh. You have done a fantastic job. You've been such a leader on climate, on justice reform, on housing, on so many issues. And, Aisha's going to do a fantastic job representing us, I know, but we're going to miss you. And I hope to see you around here, every now and then.
Thank you, man. We'll go to the farmer's market again. You tour me around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Linda.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for all the work you've done for our California and our environment. Sometimes I look at the oil companies and how insurmountable like the opposition is, and then I see you pass like all these environmental bills, and so you give us like a lot of heart and your courage and your knowledge, and we're just really glad that you're in the state legislature. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. I'm really excited for what you guys are doing. It's not, again, electing you, Richard, it's not just knowledgeable people and champions, as you said, that word champions, just people who are going to be leaders. So it's amazing.
And I'll just say again, thank you. And I've always known you to be the climate guy, right, in the Senate, and the most prolific and successful. I mean, the number of bills that you've gotten through and passed and worked together with other senators has just been phenomenal. And I just today realized, oh, you did other things too. So thank you for all you've done supporting the state and the climate and Sunnyvale. And we are gonna miss you, but we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I will let you continue to debrief and talk about what's happened locally and plan ahead. I'm going to go up to Pacifica and actually do a little bit of a recap there and hopefully get my coastal fix in for a little bit. But great to see you all. Thank you so much. And Mike, I just want to also, Mike, leadership, you need great leadership to just sustain this kind of involvement, especially through the pandemic, but to sustain this kind of involvement. And you guys have had at all levels. Martin, keeping us all honest, focused. But yeah, you guys, it's just a great team all the way around. I just really appreciate it. I always love telling the story that, like, when you say, livable this, livable Mountain View, usually those livable groups are more considered a little more anti-housing. Livable Sunnyvale is pro-housing. Livable Sunnyvale is
right.
So anyway, it's going to be interesting there too. We got a lot of big projects now going, so we got to get some of these over the finish line. Anyway, I could talk for a long time. I just want to say thank you all, and we'll stay in touch.
Great. Thanks a lot.
You know how to reach me.
Thanks.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So glad that Josh was able to make it and give those remarks. Next, we're going to move on to our election recap. We already got a little bit from Josh, so I'm sure, Martin, you'll revise any of your comments based on that, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, give me 1 second to share my screen. And yeah, so okay, so yeah, Josh gave you kind of the high level overview of everything nationally and statewide. So I'm just gonna jump in with start, I think, with the statewide ballot measures. So those so And you can see those on the screen, but 1, 28, and 31 passed. Everything else failed by varying margins. None of these were actually particularly close. The closest would have been Prop 30, which was the climate related tax. That failed 42% to 58%. 27 notably got completely which was the DraftKings ballot measure, got completely annihilated. It got a 82.5% voting no, which is, I believe, I saw this out on election night. It's probably shifted a bit since then, but I believe that qualifies for top 10 worst performances of a ballot measure in state history.
Certainly per dollar for sure.
Oh, yeah. So that's statewide ballot measures. Other state races for Board of Equalization, Sally Lieber won by a lot, 70% to 30%. Congressional, Ro Khanna won by a lot, 71% to 29%. We mentioned this earlier, but State Senate, Aisha Wahab won by fairly close margin, 50, although less close now than it was on election night, 54% to 46%. So, so let's get to more local races. Well, Assembly, Evan Lowe won his re-election 74% to 26%. That's not particularly surprising, but so let's get to okay, local races. So just to kind of recap, counties at 95% counted. So these are not quite final numbers, but they should be pretty close to final numbers. However, we're going to get to a race where pretty close to final is not actually good enough to determine a winner. So spoilers. But okay, so county sheriff, which is also pretty close. So Bob Johnson is ahead by about 6,900 votes. That's a 50.8% to 49.2%. So that is a close race. City of Sunnyvale, these are two cases of two very different election results. D1 is not on here because Linda did not have an opponent and was elected several months ago. So in District 5, Richard beat his opponent Sachin Dave by slightly under a 3-to-1 margin. That's 71% to 29%. However, in District 3, this race is one of the closest races I've watched in probably ever. With 5,583 votes counted, Justin is ahead of Murley by 11 votes, which is within the automatic recount margin, which is 25 votes. So I believe, and somebody can probably Steve can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe that triggers the hand recount for this district.
It should, assuming that it stays like that.
Yeah, I was reading the manual, the ROV manual on this race, and I think it said they do that at the same time as the 1% manual verification, which I think starts Monday. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I don't know the details, but probably.
Yeah. So and also people have a couple more weeks to cure their ballots for signature issues and such. So usually this kind of stuff doesn't change the results that much, but on an 11 vote margin, yeah. So that one is still too close to call. So, but now, okay, so moving on to school districts, these went well. For Fremont Union, Naomi, Rosa, and Stanley all won. Linda Price came in 9,000, a bit under 9,000 votes short of winning, so that's a very good result. With Andrew Ernest far behind at 6%. The percentages on that are a little weird because it's summing 100% to a vote for 3 race, but so all of the candidates we supported won in Fremont Union, and in Cupertino Union we endorsed Ava, who won alongside of Sheesh Madhathil and Jerry Liu. Darcy Paul came in 4th, and again this was a vote for 3. So that is the very so that is and Angelica mentions in chat that you have until December 6th to cure your ballot. I don't know that that applies to anybody here, but if you know somebody that needs to cure their ballot, like that would be relevant. So that's the very fast recap of the local election results for Sunnyvale. Richard.
If hypothetically I were a voter in District 3 and wanted to find out if I needed to cure my ballot, how could I go about doing that?
That is a good question. That I did not look up the answer to before doing this. But I believe if you, I believe there's a process. I believe you can go to the ROV during business hours and you can sign a thing.
I mean, how do you know that you need to, though, is the question.
Well, if you go to the ROV site, there's a thing that lets you check if your ballot was received and counted. And if it tells you your ballot has been received and counted, then you're good. And if it doesn't, tells you it hasn't been counted, then like, I mean, I get a notification. I got a notification a few weeks ago that was basically, hi, you've received your ballot, it's been counted, you're good. Like, I don't know if everybody gets emailed,
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Yeah, you have to sign up for ballot tracks for that.
Yeah, I signed up for ballot tracks, so I got the notification, but
For
Yeah,
cured
it's-
ballots, the registrar is supposed to notify you if you have an opportunity for your ballot. I don't know what that means necessarily. Angelica could tell you more, but I believe they send you a letter of some sort or a card.
Or whatever contact information they have for
Wait,
you.
Chief, hold on. She can tell you a little more. She's been talking about this a lot lately.
For ballot curing, the ROV is supposed to send you a letter after all of this. It's like a very short turnaround time. They have not sent the letters out yet, and they inform you that your ballot has been rejected, and they tell you that you have to either sign something or come down to the ROV before December 6th to cure your ballot in order for it to be counted.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, everyone should listen to Angelica because she knows what she's talking about more than I do.
And just a quick note, I would say, you could also possibly be proactive if you want to check to see if your ballot has been counted. There is a website on, yeah, exactly. You can go and check. So if you want to be proactive to make sure that your ballot counted, that probably could save you some time. But I will tell you that our registrar is not as efficient as I think it should be, but they're going to try and get those letters out. There are, according to the registrar of voters, about 1,500 last I checked, because I was part of the ballot curing team for both Aisha and Cindy. And there are about throughout the county about 1,500 so far that have a problem with it or has not been counted or has been rejected. So it's still substantial, especially in your Sunnyvale, was it 3 race?
Yeah.
Yes, honey, I know. The baby agrees that that's a problem.
So thank you. Yes, so did anyone else have any questions, comments about local election results?
On the District 3 election, I was surprised how uniform the kind of the ratio was through the whole counting process. It's almost like every demographic or every block had the same split. It was really kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, so one thing to note about this election is that locally turnout was honestly not that high. We're at like right now with, again, 95% of the ballots counted, we're looking at 54% countywide turnout, which is honestly not that great. It was like at 50%, it was at like 50% in 2014 for just kind of a comparison for what rock bottom looks like. So you're with on that, I suspect. But what's interesting is that even with relatively low turnout, there are patterns you see in late returns generally that don't appear to have shifted, had a noticeable direction in that race, or honestly quite a few of the other races I've been watching around the county. If you watch the state Senate returns, Lily May was ahead on election night. And if we want to just pin that down, and she was somewhat significantly ahead in the county level results, in the county results on election night. But every batch that came in over the succeeding days, that lead cut down and erased itself and eventually reversed. And so you'd think from that and the takeaway I get from that is that the later votes were generally more progressive than the ones counted on election, than the ones counted, say, on election night. But if you look at something like D3, you'd notice that the results have been fairly similar every batch. Like Justin has been ahead by a 2-digit margin, varying except I think on the Wednesday update when Murley took a slight lead that got reversed by, I want to say, by the following batch. I think that was Wednesday. It might have been Tuesday. I'd have to go back and check, but it's been pretty consistent on every batch. Colleen.
Thank you. As I was watching the votes, I apologize for not being up to date on how the County Board of Supervisors is run for Santa Clara County. There was only one person on the ballot for Santa Clara County Supervisors, and that was because that seat was termed out. So why weren't other Santa Clara County seats up for a re-election this session? Does anybody have any inside information about how Santa Clara County Supervisor seats went this?
Through the chair, I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Colleen, thank you for the question. I work for Supervisor Susan Ellenberg, and it was her seat that was up for re-election. She did not have an opponent after the primary, so she won outright in the primary. And when that happens, they do not put them in the general. Okay. She won it outright. In order to go past the primary, you need to have over 50%. But she also didn't have an opponent, so it was inefficient to have her in the general because she didn't have anyone to run against.
Yeah, if you're running for board of supervisor and if you get more than 50% of the vote in the primary, then you win, and there's no runoff in June.
Yeah, and I'll note
some of the vote because she was unopposed.
And I'll note that while these seats weren't unopposed, it was similar. I believe it's similar for county auditor and county district attorney, which were competitive primary elections, but in both cases, the incumbent got over 50% of the vote.
Yeah, that's assessor.
Assess, yeah, I know it was some, it started with A and it had to do with money. But
Thank you. That answers my question. Thanks.
yeah, those were, and again, those were both those races were both competitive. They could have gone on to November, but they didn't. Jody.
I had a question. I don't know, Martin, if you know, or maybe Angelica knows, but I got a little into the weeds, and in the past, Republicans tended to vote early, conservatives tended to vote later, and you could sort of see that in election results. And now I'm hearing that Republicans are voting day of, and Democrats earlier. But what I'm wondering is how that affects like the first night and the first week of counting ballots, because the part I don't understand is the night of, election night results. Is that day of votes? Is that early votes? When are those later votes actually getting counted? Is it earlier or later? You understand my question?
I can address that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. People, votes that are actually cast on election day get counted on election day and will be reported. If you vote in a vote center on election day, if you mail your vote by mail ballot in early enough, they will process your signature before election day, and they'll prepare the ballot for counting election night, and those ballots will also be counted election night. But if you walk into a vote center on election day with your blue ballot envelope, or if you deposit it in a ballot box, one of those drop boxes on election day, while they're received by election day, which is great, they don't start looking at the envelopes and checking signatures until the next day, because they're too busy on election day processing all of those other ballots. So they have to check all those signatures, plus anybody who casts a provisional ballot. Those actually have to get processed last, because they have to make sure you didn't actually turn in an absentee ballot beforehand. So all of those walk-in ballots that come in on election day, and a lot of Democrats did that, those get counted later. So that's why, especially with Trump encouraging Republicans not to vote early and not to vote by mail and to walk into election day, you would get that red mirage where you got more Republican votes nationwide being counted on election day, and a lot of the Democratic votes from Democrats being counted after election day. We also have in the county in California where vote by mail ballots that are postmarked on election day, but not actually received up till 7 days after election day, also get counted, and those also have to be processed. So, the election's not certified until about 30 days after election day, and that's when everything becomes official.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that, and this is particularly, again, because of what Trump told people to do, but it's been very pronounced, like something that I noticed in June when I was watching the state Senate race in particular, is that Republicans did very well in the batches that were coming in later on election night, like the 9:15, the 10:30, the 11:15 election night batches. But then Democrats were doing comparatively well on like the Thursday batch, the Friday batch, etc. So I think this is still kind of in flux a bit because of the Trump effect, and it's been it's different this year than it was in 2020 to some extent, and that's acted differently than it did in 2018. But that is just what I have noticed this year. And again, in local races that are nonpartisan, it can just be weird. Like, I don't like, this doesn't for local nonpartisan races. I'd be hard pressed to really point to any trends. So I don't see any other questions, so I'll hand it back to Crystal.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martin. That was a really insightful overview. Next, we'll move on to our panel discussion. So we have a number of newly elected officials here with us today. So we've got Richard Mellinger, Linda Sell, Naomi Nakano Matsumoto, and we had invited a few others, but specifically Murli Srinivasan was going to be out of town, and I guess we didn't hear back from Justin. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. Maybe he's taking some time off, I don't know.
Yep.
So, yeah, I did spend quite a bit of time talking to Murli, who's trying to get out of here to go to India. And so I did get some feedback from him, which I might jump in with here and there if we get into a topic that applies. So.
Okay, good. So thank you to those who are here. And we have a number of different topics that we'll want to get your feedback on, including the forum effectiveness, the impact of districts on the election process. Possibly we'll get into some campaign financing questions and communicating with voters, as well as any lessons learned from your candidacy that you'd like to share. So I'm just going to start it out with a question, and then we can go to our panelists. And if you don't want to say anything, that's fine. If you do, then please do. So I'm going to start with a question about the candidate forums. So there were multiple candidate forums and many of you participated, and just wondering what you thought were the best formats and if you have advice for the forum organizers for the next election cycle. Go ahead, Linda.
I wanted to say that the Sunnyvale Democratic Club having their forum early as a candidate helped me prepare and think about things. And so that was really helpful to me as a candidate, and all the really great, thoughtful questions that I had to figure out things. So I thought it was helpful, the Sunnyvale Democratic Club forum, being early and preparing me as a candidate.
Nice, thank you. Richard.
Yeah, I thought the Sunnyvale Dems Club forum, having it early, was really good. I think if we do an early Dems Club forum again, it is probably better to see if we can have the picnic before the Dems Club forum so that people have the chance to sort of meet the candidates and talk to them one-on-one beforehand. So whether that means pushing the endorsement forum into July or pulling the picnic into June, not sure, but I think that having the chance to meet with the candidates in person before the forum is a good thing. Couple other forums that I attended, the Snail / League of Women Voters forum for District 5. I thought it was very well done. So they did an interesting thing where instead of having us together the whole time, which is what most of the forums do as opposed to endorsement interviews, they had my opponent and I answer the same batch of questions separately. We had to leave the room, when it wasn't our turn. We gave our word of honor that we weren't going to watch the other person's answers. And so the effect there was it felt less like a debate. It felt less like, oh, I've got to respond to what my opponent is saying, that sort of thing. And then they brought us back together for questions from the audience, which I thought that was a really, really well done and a really good balance. And then the Livable Sunnyvale forum, I thought was really good. Lots of great in-depth questions. The only critique I had of the Livable Sunnyvale forum was that they used a fixed order for the candidates that rotated down one each time. And so it was, if you had candidates A, B, C, D, E, So you go A first on one question, then B first on the next question, then C first on the next question. And what that meant was that, so all the candidates from all the districts were in a big pool together. And what that meant was you had most of the time one candidate in a given race would go before the other, right? And so one thing I would suggest for anyone who's thinking of putting on a forum that involves multiple candidates in the future is either just do a random order for each question or reverse the order periodically or something to ensure that candidates in a given race are going, first and second, roughly the same frequency. I know that is very technical and very wonky, but it's that's the only thing. But I thought the questions on the Livable Sunnyvale forum were fantastically in depth, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay, and Naomi.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank the club for all the support that you provided myself and the other two candidates, and whether it was the club or individuals in the club. One of the things that I noticed with the forums that I participated in, there really wasn't a lot of real in-depth questions that really distinguished each candidate from each other, and levels of, I guess, experience and even like within the Democratic clubs, what's your commitment to the Democratic principles, and because some of us have been lifelong Democrats and some just came new to the table, and not criticizing because we need to, I know that, there was a lot at stake and we needed to get Democrats elected, but, in any other year, candidates like that would have been, I guess, pressed a little bit harder. And so, and that sounds self-serving, but, I put in a lot of time as a Democrat, and put in a lot of effort, and have always voted and supported the Democratic Party. Even, I was born and raised in Utah, so being a Democrat in Utah is not easy, right? And so I feel like my values really align with this club, and people weren't scrutinized. And I'm not just talking about within this club, but within our party overall.
Yeah, if I could echo that one very briefly, throw hardballs. Seriously, candidates who are prepared will appreciate the hardball questions.
Yeah, and Naomi, specifically the follow-up on that, certainly in a forum that is put on by a Democratic club, and you'd expect kind of Democratic club type questions, but in other forums and nonpartisan forums where, and even the role, right, of Board of Education is supposed to be nonpartisan. Did you find that in some of those nonpartisan type of forums that the questions were, I don't want to speak for you, but were the questions sufficient enough to be able to tell the difference between kind of the candidates' values and priorities and things like that?
I think with some of the more core issues that we were really trying to ensure or core ideologies didn't get voted in. I think we could have pushed more overall, or the forums could have pushed more, but because it is nonpartisan, it's a fine line, right? Because as much as I appreciate the support of the Dem Club, and I want that Democratic Club endorsement, it is a nonpartisan race, and it needs to keep being a nonpartisan race. And so you've got to try to balance that even in your forums too, and even in my answers, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but
Yeah, I think so. To Richard's point, ask hardball questions that maybe focus on issues more as opposed to ideologies, to try to get to those differentiating aspects. Yeah. Mike.
Yeah, just to, so I got feedback from Early and he reiterated just what Richard was saying about one candidate following the other, and it's pretty easy. It's a short amount of time to speak. And, he says you can easily steal 2 or 3 points from the previous candidate and you're almost, then you're almost done. So he definitely thought that was an issue. I also thought it was interesting. He felt maybe that the Livable Sunnyvale Forum, even though, Livable Sunnyvale doesn't endorse, but he felt like he was kind of going into hostile territory because Justin had been on the board of Livable Sunnyvale. So, which although, he agreed that there wasn't anything he could point to like in the questions of the format that was giving a benefit to one person or another. But so I thought that was an interesting comment on his part. And actually, I was kind of surprised how few forums there were. There weren't that many forums. Oh, and another aspect of which, and this is kind of a contrast between Merle and Justin, but most of the people, of course, listening to a forum are citywide, right? They're not, except for the snail forum probably. And even there, but so there's for example, Merle seemed to focus more on district issues in his district, and where Justin, because of his background, has more of a regional perspective. So, but for example, the Dem Club voting for, and the general reaction may tend to be, I mean, most of us live elsewhere, right, in other districts, citywide. So we have a different perspective than somebody in that district. So a forum that just has people in the district would probably get a different reaction from people and possibly focus on different issues. So those were some of his comments.
Yeah, good, thank you. And Linda.
I guess I just wanted feedback from the membership, like people here who are the most active in our club. Do people in general, like some other clubs, they have like an endorsement committee, and then they have in-depth interviews with all the candidates, and then they come and then they give a recommendation, and then the entity decides yay or nay, or bring it to discussion. Or I was just wondering, do people, like, we've had this like endorsement where it's like the whole club is like the endorsement committee, and we go into detail on all the candidates. And I was just wondering, do people like that, the way we've been doing things? That's my question for anyone. Do people like the way we hold the Sunnyvale Democratic Club holds, like it, their endorsement interviews? Any thoughts?
Colleen.
I'm not sure I have a strong opinion one way or the other, but and I'm not sure I'm that involved in the club, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer your question. But anyway, I have noticed that I can't think of any other way to say it, and this is exaggerating. It's without vetting the candidates first, it's a little bit like the Wild West. Because after the fact, and again, I'm not that informed, but I realized that we endorsed someone that the county club didn't, or we didn't endorse somebody the county club didn't. Afterwards, it's kind of surprising what we did, which is, but I think overall, I kind of like the more free form, it's not so edited, it's not so prepared. So maybe it's not so polished. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else? I did see another hand earlier. It's not there now.
Well, since there's not too much comment, maybe that's like people like the way we did it. So, or have been doing it. So that's good.
I see Gail. That's a hand raised.
Yeah, I like the way we do it. I think the more the merrier. I'm familiar with one person who does his own interviews. He says it's a committee, and then he publicizes who he endorses. And I don't like that. The more the merrier. I think I'd much rather have 20 or 30 or 50 people listening to candidates than 3 who I have no idea if those 3 are biased or not. At least if we have 50, the bias is more like spread out. So I like it the way we do it. And I think Marley's being picky. I'm speaking for Livable Sunnyvale. The way we asked those questions was absolutely nonpartisan. I'm sorry he feels that way, but he's never been to a Livable Sunnyvale meeting. And I think we're pretty damn democratic. And we were very careful about the questions. And sorry, he has an inferiority complex.
All right. Well, he's not here to defend his comments. So hopefully we will be able to have him back to give a little more detail. Okay, Richard.
One thing I would say about the Democratic Club endorsement process, I'm biased because I helped design it several times. Linda and me both. But I think I think we've got it fairly well honed. And I think that the only change I would make to it is I'd like to see it publicized more. We get the recordings, make a big deal about putting those recordings up because that's a public service showing those candidate interviews. Make a big deal about inviting members of the public to come watch, right? That would be the only change I'd recommend for the Dems Club endorsement process is make it a big deal. Try and publicize it, try and get the word out as much as possible because there aren't that many opportunities for people to see their candidates, especially at a local level.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, the one other thing I'll say, and I don't know how much this is, that I think we need to do we need to find a way of refining for races that don't necessarily get the early endorsements, because we talked about earlier about how the early endorsement was helpful for council, but when we did the endorsement for Fremont Union School Board, that involved meeting. I suspect it came off better to the general public than it did in the general membership than it did in my chair, because quite frankly, I was scrambled because because who was running in that race was in flux until basically the deadline for until a week before the endorsement meeting. So I had to do a lot. So I and others helped. Had to do a lot of scrambling to make sure that everybody that needed to be invited was invited, and that all got squared away. So just trying to time the later in cycle endorsement meetings so that we get everybody, but it's also not so close to the election that it's not going to do anything is kind of a challenge.
And Linda, I will just answer your question from my opinion. I do like the way that the Dem Club does the endorsements. I've seen the endorsement process in other places where it's a small group, a small committee that is doing the interviews and making the decisions. And after having been a part of that myself in another organization, I have found that I don't really agree with how that process works at all. So I do like having, you know, the whole club making the decision and getting more voices in the room, and we have an opportunity to hash it out and talk about it and make a better decision collectively, I think. Mike.
Yeah, so a couple points before we leave forums. One was something Richard pointed out to me, which was the League of Women Voters had this, I forget what they called it, but basically optional, a rebuttal thing, and you had one opportunity to do a rebuttal. And he pointed out that if you have one rebuttal option, you know, one token or whatever for rebuttal, you're never going to use it because you don't know until the very end whether your opponent is going to throw out some outrageous thing, you know, that you're accepting money from Hugo Chavez or something, and then you've already used your thing. And I did communicate that to the League of Women Voters, who I was volunteering with as part of their, you know, their election to help with their forums. And I think they agreed with that and changed that, I believe, in the later forums or probably for other candidates. And the other thing, Naomi was very kind of courteous, but I thought the school district forums were, at least the early ones, were absolutely appalling, because you had sets of candidates who were just diametrically opposed in their positions. And the questions like, what's great about Fremont Union High School District, were just not at all useful to anybody. And I felt like if you left a forum like that and did not realize there was just a dramatic difference between the candidates in fundamental issues to schools, that the forum had failed. And I think if there's anything in all the forums we want to do, if there is a significant difference in some area between candidates, try and structure questions that will bring that out. And particularly this was challenging this year because of course, in this area, you know, it's overwhelmingly Democratic and progressive. So candidates were going out of their way to hide their more conservative positions, and you know, and so it seems like it's a responsibility of the forums to somehow bring that out for the purpose of the voters.
And Linda.
I thought the Sunnyvale Democratic Club with the Fremont Union High School candidate forum, like that was a way for, it was such a short timeline, that election, and getting word out about the candidates. And so that was a way for me to forward the video of the interviews of all the 3 candidates that we endorsed. And it was a way for me to like, you don't have time to get to a meet and greet, but these are the candidates, and watch them. And then my friends would watch them and they go, oh yeah, we really like all 3 candidates. And so I thought that all the work you did in those questions and having it, you know, Zoom and providing the video and putting it so easily accessible, I think it, like Richard said, can be a real service to the community. So if it's, you continue that, but also be able to spread it out further too, so.
All right, sounds good. Let's move on to a different topic. So the impact of districts on the election process. So several races like Sunnyvale City Council, Sunnyvale Elementary, and Foothill De Anza have moved to district elections. So in retrospect, what were the pros and cons? And specifically for campaigning, for attracting qualified candidates, or any other areas that you're thinking of? Richard.
Well, personally, from a pro perspective, there's a couple things. I think this is actually, frankly, a huge improvement for the city. I think this is tremendously positive. I'm going to throw out a couple things. I was able to knock close to 2,000 doors in my district. I don't know the exact number, but of the total, there are 6,000 doors in my district. I was able to personally myself knock a third of them. And I probably could have done much more than that. Like, this was me knocking every weekend. If I had decided I'm going to be knocking every evening too, I could probably have gotten 2/3, right? So that's a tremendous advantage to district elections. It means that the candidates can actually really get out and engage with a tremendous portion of the electorate, of their electorate. It means the voters get to know their candidates a lot better. And I'll tell you, I knocked on a bunch of doors in District 5 where they said, wow, you're the first person to ever come knock on my door, right? And yes, that's heartwarming, but it's also like, that should give us pause because that's a problem, right? Like that's actually a problem. And the second thing I'll say is, from a money perspective, it means that you can run a no corporate money campaign, which I did. I was able to fundraise entirely without taking corporate contributions, without taking developer contributions. And, you know, that would be much, much, much harder to do. It would be much harder to run an effective campaign at the at-large level, you know, simply because of the money factor. So I think this is a really, really big advantage. And I also think it means, I'm going to be honest here, North Sunnyvale has not had good representation on our city council historically. Like, it's for a long time, you know, we've had only one council member north of the tracks. Frankly, it shows. There is definitely a perspective among North Sunnyvale residents that North Sunnyvale has been neglected, and that it has been treated as the wrong side of the tracks for a very long time. And I do want to say that recent councils have done a lot of work to try and improve that. We've got a bunch of new parks. There's a bunch of things that have been done, but there is no substitute for genuine representation. And, you know, we hear this, I've heard this a lot also talking with parents here about the Fremont Union High School District, that there has not been any representation from North Sunnyvale in quite some time. So I think that, like, the impact of people being able to know their representatives, the impact of not requiring massive, $100,000, $150,000 to run a campaign, and the impact of, actually having a true local rep, ensuring that we have, equitable geographic representation on our city council, I think it's very, very positive. And I can't wait to see what our new council does.
Thanks, Richard. Go ahead, Linda.
So even though I wasn't running, I did knock on doors to the neighbors, and it was nice. They felt like, when I talked to the people, they felt really good that, there was somebody that was like their district person. Although I told them all 7 council members represent all Sunnyvale city, all of the city, but they just felt like, oh, I have somebody that would have been elected by our area and is there to, like, understand our concerns and elevate that to the council. I felt like everybody that I talked to felt good about district elections that I talked to when I knocked on the doors. And then same with Richard. I was able to just fundraise just on, grassroots donations, like individuals, and, every little donation. Like for me, I had over 100 donors, and it was like that you can fund a campaign just on, like, small donations. It was great. And I didn't have to, like, figure out, go to big money interests to fund the campaign. So that was really nice. And so I like the feel of the district elections, although, if there were some other people that got elected and just focus on district issues, then that might not be good. But the people that we have running, the people that are leaders in our community, no matter if they're from districts or not, they're just the kind of people that would care about the whole city. But I can see like other people that would say, oh, you know, certain people would be elected, but maybe those people wouldn't get elected. Those people wouldn't be endorsed by the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. Those people that just care about the little district would not get like wide support. And so all our district, like Richard, got, like, everyone's support. And so you can never say he's like gonna just focus on his district, but then, so I think the way we have the system is good, that you need to get support widely, but you also, your constituents feel like that they're represented well in the district. So I like this district thing that we have.
Thank you. And Naomi.
Okay, so as everyone knows, Fremont Union High School District was not by district. We are still at large. There are pros and cons to it, and you know, I have my own opinion about which way I would vote if we were to come to a vote on this. Some of the cons is that, as Linda and Richard have said, it's that we would only probably concentrate on the school, high school that we were assigned from that area that we were voted in from, and that we would not see the whole district in many ways. But when we look at, and Richard touched on the North Sunnyvale, we have not had representation from North Sunnyvale or Sunnyvale, in a sense that Sunnyvale School District residents have been on our school board for many, many years. And, you know, both school districts are great, but Sunnyvale is very different than Cupertino School District. Our communities are very different. You know, our students are very different, you know, socioeconomically in many ways, very different, all both very good communities, but just very different. And so I'm the only one still that sits on the board that is from Sunnyvale School District. And so my eyes see things differently than, and my experiences with my kids see things very differently than those who are from the Cupertino School District, even though they may live in Sunnyvale. And I have friends who live in, you know, Sunnyvale whose kids went to Cupertino School District, and their experiences are very different than mine, even though it's, you know, and so north of Sunnyvale Middle School, that's it. I mean, I'm it, and I'm not even North Sunnyvale. I'm, you know, just north of Sunnyvale Middle School. So my concern is that the voices of Sunnyvale and North Sunnyvale continue to not be heard or brought to the table. You know, even with this proposal or the thing that is out there about a North Sunnyvale school, high school, you know, I can tell you which way it's going to go if it came to a vote, because of a lot of emotions and where the power is right now in the community and in on the board. That I have full respect for my colleagues on the board. I'm just saying we all, you know, we just have different life experiences. But the other thing I wanted to point out is Sunnyvale carried us on Measure G, right? Sunnyvale has always voted to support our bonds and our parcel taxes. And Sunnyvale is where our growth is projected. And our decrease in our enrollment is projected in the Cupertino, San Jose area. So I, you know, keep saying that Sunnyvale, you know, once it wakes up and decides to be a strong political power, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with, and we need to be part of that, I guess. So get off my soapbox now.
All right, thank you. Sue.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I just had a comment that I'd heard other people say, including a couple of council members. And I think I agree with it. And that is, where were all the people that were supposed to run, in the districts? Because what we've heard and what's true, it makes it easier in a district to afford and cover and do all the things that you need to do to run for office. Yet we only had one person that was actually opposed, right? Well, that's not quite true, but we should.
I was opposed.
You were opposed. I know. It didn't seem like it to me, but I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. But still, it should be more than a couple people. It should be at least a couple, or 3 or 4, or so. The comment is, why didn't we have more people run now that we have this district system? And what can we do to encourage people to take that step and say, look, this is easier now. I might be able to afford this. I can walk that far, or whatever. And I really care about my district and I want to contribute. So I'm not exactly sure how this all works out so that we can, encourage more people to run. Maybe it will just be a natural thing that happens once people get used to the district system and they start hearing things like Linda and Richard, are saying. Maybe that needs to get publicized a little more. But the other thing is that, of course, we did have outstanding candidates. What can I say? They're the best. And so glad that I don't even think about these other folks. I mean, Richard and Linda and Justin and Merle, I know them all so well, and they're all such fine people. But we need to encourage other people too. We need to, empower people that you can do this too. You can get involved too. So one possible thing, and here's my plug, but Leadership Sunnyvale is a way for people to get involved, find out what makes the city tick, who the people are. It doesn't seem so intimidating. And besides that, it's a wonderful learning experience, et cetera, et cetera. It's really valuable information, but we do have that there in place. And maybe one tactic we can use is to try and get more people in Leadership Sunnyvale. But in any case, the comment is just generally, I'd like to see, and some other people would like to see more people run. And otherwise, I'm happy with the district elections as they went, and I think it's a good direction. So thanks.
And Sue, that is amazing, because you picked the next question, which I was going to tee up, and you already did it for me. So I want to hear from the candidates about how to attract competing candidates and in the district type system. So Linda.
Well, since I've been elected, I've been going to like block parties and I've been meeting people. And I think people look at me and they think, oh, like I could do that too. And so like several people have approached and said, maybe next time I'll run, or, so, and some of them are, I think there's someone that shouldn't be here, but they've, said, how can I get involved? And so I've encouraged them to get onto commissions. I've encouraged, and they've done that. And I've encouraged them to participate in Leadership Sunnyvale, and they're doing that. So I think that there is an energy out there to run. It's just that this cycle coming off of COVID and, how can you compete against a Richard? So maybe it's just the challenge was too big for that. But I see the next generation coming behind me, like, and they're listening. How do I get involved? How do I run? And it's all the same things that Sue was saying, like livable getting involved, Sunnyvale Democratic Club, livable Sunnyvale, and encouraging them to take leadership Sunnyvale, encouraging them to serve on the commissions, all of that and more. So it's all good.
Nice. Thank you. Naomi.
Okay. Again, I'm not coming from a district election perspective, but I think it's being out in the community and really.
Can you believe that chemicals you can buy for $1?
So, and that I talked to probably over about a dozen people to encourage them to run from North Sunnyvale, and they just weren't ready yet. But we're going to get them ready for the next election. And so but because we are still at large, what it's going to mean is they're going to have to try to garner 30,000 votes to even be, one of the top finishers, right? I mean, that also means the money that they're going to have to raise to do that. Luckily, Fremont Union High School District pays half of the filing fees, but it is, or the ballot statement. It's still a lot of money you have to raise, and more so than in a district type of election. And so those are barriers, especially for those who may be challenged socioeconomically and need money to place in feeding their families and paying rent and other things, but who are good leaders. And a lot of times too, what I've in talking to most of them were women, they felt that they weren't educated enough or smart enough or able enough to run, which, they're community leaders. They were bringing people together. They're running their PTSAs, right? So they're more than able to run and serve on a board, but they don't know that. And so we have to go out and be in that community too, just like Linda said, that, as she's talking to people, they're seeing someone who is modeling for them what that means to be engaged in this way.
Nice. Richard.
Yeah, so first of all, what Naomi said, I have heard so many very, very smart, qualified people. When I say you should run for office, who, me? I can't do that. I don't know enough. You know a lot more than you think. And what you don't know, you can learn, right? So first of all, it's like, if you know someone who you think would be good on city council, on school board, on water board, on these special districts, tell them you should run for office. You should think about running for office. You would be really good on city council. You would be really good on school board. Tell them explicitly, because a lot of people don't hear that, right? The second thing I'm going to say is, this is where civil society organizations like the Democratic Club and Livable Sunnyvale come in. It is no coincidence that 4 of the 5 council candidates this year came from either the Democratic Club board or the Livable Sunnyvale board, or in my case, both. The civil society organizations like Livable Sunnyvale and the Democratic Club are a springboard into higher office. PTSAs, as Naomi was talking, are a springboard into higher office, right? That's how you start to get people into the system. That's how you start to get people onto the track. There is, in the days of the Roman Republic, I'm really dating myself here, the historian is coming out, but there was what was called the cursus honorum, the road of honors. And it was essentially the path of public offices that you would hold on your way to the consulship, which was the highest office in the state. And it started with, I think it was, you were responsible for the grain dole in one particular area of the city of Rome, right? And so in local government, in politics in general, there is still a cursus honorum. There is a path that you take if you want to run for office and be effective in running for office. And it involves serving on the board of civil society organizations. It involves serving on the board, on city boards and commissions. I don't know if the school districts have something similar to the boards and commissions. I know like in some cases there are ad hoc advisory commissions, things like that, is serving in civil society in appointed positions. So, you know, that's something else. You know, someone you think would be good, recruit them into civil society orgs, recruit them onto a board or commission. You know, have you thought about serving on the BPAC? There's a vacancy on the BPAC coming up, by the way, the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission. You know, so that's one thing. And the other thing I'm going to say is that ideally you start prepping people to run in odd years. If you are waiting until the even year to try to find somebody, you're already too late, right? You're already going to be scrambling. You've got to be, if you are looking for candidates to run in 2024, you should be starting to look now. And by the way, we're going to have an open seat in District 4 on City Council in 2 years. Start looking for candidates now. Start talking to people. You know, one other thing I'll add is that could be important for recruiting candidates is starting to shift the civic life of the city back to in-person. Zoom has been very good. Zoom has actually been great for attendance in a lot of ways. Livable Sunnyvale's attendance basically doubled when we switched to Zoom meetings, at least. Democratic Club has been getting pretty good attendance on Zoom meetings, but I will say there are some disadvantages. You know, side conversations don't happen in Zoom meetings. You can't go and chat someone up over the cookie table. You can't go and say, you know, find somebody in a break or before or after the meeting and say, hey, great job on that presentation. What do you think about X? So much of politics is based on these sort of random collisions, right? That's what civil society does, is it provides space for people to meet, it introduces people to each other, it forms connections. And I love the convenience of Zoom, and I hope that, you know, the Dems Club and Livable Sunnyvale continue to do at least some of their meetings on Zoom. But I also think that starting to bring things back to in-person is one way to help get more people involved. And then lastly, I know I've gone on a lot. Recruitment, recruitment, recruitment. You want to get people to run for office, start by recruiting them into the Democratic Club. Start by recruiting them into Livable Sunnyvale. Young people, people of color, women especially. So, because this is where it starts. Livable Sunnyvale, when I joined Livable Sunnyvale 4.5 years ago, that was what started to, God, 5 years ago, geez. That was what started to get me thinking about this. So recruit. Anyway, I've talked enough on this, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I will note that it is possible not to follow the path and still get elected.
It is. It very much is, but it helps.
Yes.
It absolutely helps.
It helps get good candidates. I'm just thinking of our president previous. Okay, Linda.
I want to say that I agree with Richard, that this club and other organizations like it are such a great resource for somebody that I would have, I got involved in Sunnyvale Democratic Club 6 years ago. And at that Sears mark, I would have never conceived about, running for city council. But then along the way, the experience of leadership, the experience of, meeting all these really involved Sunnyvale residents who, care so much about our community and, work so hard on campaigns and support candidates that are running and give candidates good ideas and support. So I just think there's a reason why the Sunnyvale City Council has a majority of Democrats. I think part of it is our demographics, and part of it is the strength of our club and Livable Sunnyvale, and that we're able to help candidates elevate the issues that these candidates would run on. And so the Sunnyvale Democratic Club is a reflection of our community, and reflect, and therefore the council reflects our community. So thank you to the club and its members.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, on the subject of Zoom, I just want to report that during the previous couple speakers, I have purged two accounts from this meeting on the grounds that they were making disruptive noises and appeared to not actually be people that I've ever heard of before. People that I've never heard of before is fine. People that are making noises about chemtrails can disappear.
Yes, thank you for doing that, Martin. Judy.
One of the things that I discovered about 6 years ago in talking to people about rent stabilization, they don't know anything about government. And a lot of them think that it's dirty. They don't want to belong to it. And another thing is we have roughly 130,000 population, and less than half of them vote, and less than half of them are registered to vote, and less than half vote. So in my opinion, maybe we should work on getting more people registered to vote and involved. That's my opinion.
Yeah, good points. Richard.
Riffing off Judy very briefly, one thing I think that the city could do, there was a candidate school that they put on with 16 different department heads that all 5 of us attended. And it was in late September. And it was a fantastic overview of how city government works, of what the different departments do, of the responsibilities, of the issues. It was brilliant. And it was also too late, right? Like something like that, that's something that should be done yearly, and it should be done as a public outreach, public education stuff, not just we're going to educate the candidates so that they, if they win, they have some idea what they're doing, but show the public how the city works, right? This is something that the city could do that I think would be fantastic. In terms of voter registration, that's something else. Judy brought that up, having voter registration drives, starting to, do that sort of work. That's really important to get people engaged. So yeah, going out. Thank you.
Yeah, Richard, that I didn't know that they had that candidate school, and it does sound like an awesome thing to bring to the whole city. And
I'll drop the recording in chat.
Huh?
I'll drop the recording in chat. It's very good.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And maybe on council, you can push that forward. Okay, we're going to move to another topic, communicating with voters. So couple of questions on this topic. So how did you feel you were able to communicate your views and qualifications to voters? And did you face any barriers in this area? And then also, what do you think was your most effective tool or tools for getting votes? And there's many tools out there. I won't list them all, but what you think were your most effective ways to reach people?
Well, I guess I'll start on this. Mail is still king. I'm gonna be perfectly honest on that. Mail is the absolute only way you can guarantee that voters will see your face and your name, even if it is in the 10 seconds between opening their mailbox and dropping it in the recycling. It is, there are homes that you cannot knock because they are gated. This is especially the case with apartments. And so, yeah, unfortunately, mail is still critical, but the second most important thing on there, is knocking doors. Like I said, I knocked close on 2,000 doors, and I probably should have knocked more than that. And so that's something that's tremendously important. Voters want to see people knocking doors in their neighborhood. It gives them the opportunity to hear what you stand for, to see where you stand on the issues, to ask you questions, and it humanizes you. It means that they don't think of you as just another empty suit. If you show up on their doorstep looking, maybe a little haggard after 3 hours of knocking doors, and say, hello, I'm running for city council. Do you have a moment? Right. So in terms of, what was really effective, I think those two were the most effective. Some candidates have had success with running digital ads. I have found it to be an incredibly frustrating process to try and run these things. You basically, at this point, the systems are so complicated, you basically need outside expertise. And phone and text banking. Phone banking, I mostly got answering machines and bad numbers. Text banking, I had some moderate success with it. So that was my experience on voter outreach. And then, of course, there's the forums themselves, which kind of depends on how well the forums are publicized.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that insight. Sue?
Sorry, my daughter's birthday is today and they're just about ready to be here. So I'm running around trying to get things ready. The thing, I can't remember the bill number, but someone will, I'm sure. But I just read how different municipalities are changing the law so that journalists, newspapers that are actually written by journalists will have more money to operate it. And the way they would do it is to tech companies use the content of our papers for free. And if they are able to charge the tech companies for using the content, it'll bring tons and tons of money. And this has been tried out in several other places and it works really well. And all of a sudden there's jobs to be had at the newspaper. There's reporters that can cover things. If we get this kind of infusion, and we should be on the lookout for this, if there's anything we can do to promote it. But geez, that would be a huge benefit for Sunnyvale, who has suffered from a lack of local reporting for a long time. We've all seen the Mercury News go down and down and down, and we've seen the Sunnyvale Sun go to, I don't know what you would call it. I think they have editorials back now, which is another vehicle you can use to publicize different things. But anyway, I think that's one of the things that's really hurt candidates. It's really hurt citizens at large because we haven't had that sort of coverage. So there is some hope on the horizon. And I think that would be a vehicle for so many people to, if they have the money, of course they could advertise, but they could also, write op-eds, they can talk to reporters, they can get their opinions out. So anyway, that's my comment.
That sounds like a topic for another meeting, a whole meeting.
It's very important though, honestly, that's the death of local news has been hugely disruptive to civil life. And this also gets into how do you recruit people for city council? Local news is vital because it helps people be engaged in their community. It helps them know what's going on. If you don't have a local newspaper, and let's face it, the Mercury basically doesn't cover us.
Yeah.
Right. That's a huge obstacle to getting people involved in civic life. So if any of you know a friendly billionaire who's interested in starting a Sunnyvale newspaper, now's the time.
Well, there might be money available if this bill passes. So you might not have to be a billionaire. That's all I'm saying.
And I think we also need to, not at this meeting, obviously, but it is also worth thinking about what that also looks like in a territory where, let's face it, a lot of given a certain recent acquisition in a news-facing market, what a lot of journalists have been used for coverage, and how a lot of people are getting the news may also be in the process of being shaken up.
Mm-hmm. Naomi, I don't think you weighed in on this topic, and you had the largest kind of geographic area, and you were running for re-election. Wondering if you have some comments on this.
You know, I give credit to some of my supporters who are strong influencers in the community. And because of their reaching out to their networks, and then they reach in, and these are also people who, you know, people go to about who do I vote for, right? And so, but I also know that on the other side of our district, there are influencers who are very negative and who, you know, had a lot of messaging out there that was misinformation, wrong information, you know, and they were influencers too. So it's being able to, you know, I don't know how to combat that, but it is influencers, especially with our young people these days. I think that is who they turn to. If so-and-so says this, they believe it, right? So, but in addition to what Richard and the others have said, I think that influencers are key, something that's not going to go away.
Yeah. And thinking about that, you know, FUHSD and the wide geographic area, there's no way you could possibly get to all the doors, right? So you do have to rely on other things like the influencers, especially. Yeah. Okay. We are getting close to our time, so I wanted to shift over to kind of a last topic area, which is lessons learned in your candidacy. So certainly for Richard and Linda, this is the first time you've run for public office. And what do you wish you knew before you started campaigning?
Linda?
Yeah, when I thought about running like a year ago, I would just like, you know, I was all nervous and everything like that. And I thought, oh, it's insurmountable. I'll never be able. I had all these like, no. And people would ask me, are you going to run? And I said, no, I'm not going to run. And, but I guess like people kept asking, and then I thought, well, I'll just try. And so sometimes when you see people and like Naomi says, oh, I've like tried to get, sometimes it does work. If like you keep going at it with people you think like should run and you keep asking them, and it does work. You do wear them down. And so I guess I would, if you're the type of person to encourage somebody to run, then keep doing it because it works. And the support I got in this club, like I said before, was huge. And so keep doing what you're doing. That's what I would say.
What I will say is, you know, one of the things I've learned, and so I had the benefit of being assistant campaign manager for Councilmember Cisneros, or Vice Mayor Cisneros. And I know Linda worked Rod Sink's campaign, I think twice. So having prior campaign experience is extremely helpful, first of all. I wish I had realized just how difficult digital advertising was going to be and hired someone to do it for me. One thing that I will say is it is very hard to find qualified campaign managers in this area. Like if you are looking for someone whose resume, LinkedIn profile says professional campaign manager, there are very, very few of them in this area. And instead what I did was I hired a friend of mine who has a lot of experience in office management, in executive assistant type work, and they were fantastic. And so like, but you absolutely need a campaign manager. You need someone who will help keep you on task, who will make sure that the paperwork gets filed, who will make sure that the questionnaires get in. That's something, you know, I knew that intellectually going in. It really drove it home just how important it is to have a good campaign manager. And it doesn't need to be someone who's done it before, right? What else do I wish I had known? I wish I had known that the post office can just lose your mailers. I had figured that once it was out, Naomi and I and the other two school board candidates did a joint mailer. And near as we can tell, it went out the door from the printer's office and the post office never delivered it. So, which, fantastic, wonderful. Didn't make a difference for us. We all still won pretty handily, but that was something I had figured, yes, you have to watch the printer like a hawk. I figured that the post office would do their job. So no, that is not something you can assume. That's some of my lessons learned.
Wow. And is there any recourse for that? Like, you spent a lot of money on those mailers, I'm assuming.
If we really wanted, we did, but it came down to 500 for each of us, and a lot of that was printing costs. So like the most we would be able to do is probably recover $150 of postage each. And the amount of effort that would take to run down is probably not worth it. But, so it's not enough to just watch the printer. You have to watch the post office too.
Interesting. Wow. All right, Carol.
I just wanted to commiserate with Richard to let him know that, a couple of years ago, the post office lost a whole month's mail of mine. And they had it because I had called to let them know I was home. And I said, would you deliver it the next day? And it disappeared. So, but you got elected anyway. Terrific. Okay.
Great, Gail.
Yeah, I remember, Richard, when the city sent out the initial letter postcard on the MOU, only 14% of the people I know got it. It's really important, and I'm sorry this is backdoor stuff, but make sure whenever you do mailings to have a list of people that's, I can't remember what we used to call this thing, but have some ringers in there so you know stuff is delivered. And you can check up on the post office. It's just part of being a direct mail maven on knowing how to manage the post office. But as someone who had someone arrested for leaving mail in the Death Valley desert, I can tell you lots of stories about lost mail.
Wow.
Gail, you and I have to get drinks sometime, and you have to tell me that story.
All right. Okay, we are about at the end of our time. I really appreciate this panel discussion. I think it was super valuable, and there are so many lessons to be learned from all of you candidates. And now I'm glad this is also recorded. So at the next election cycle, when we've all forgotten everything, we can go back and watch this. All right.
And I just want to say thank you to this club. Thank you for all of the support you've given me over the years. Thank you for your endorsement. And thank you. Like, I learned to do politics in this club, right? I learned to do politics in this club and in livable Sunnyvale. And, you all do tremendous work in this community. You are a tremendous asset to this community. And please, please, please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Linda.
And I also want to thank this club and everyone in this club, and know that my door is always open to talk about any issue you want to talk about. We've all worked together for many years together in several issues. And so please feel free to contact me anytime.
Nice. And Naomi.
I just want to echo what Richard and Linda said. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate it. I feel like I have a community and that I'm part of a community. And so I appreciate all of the support you've given me. Thank you.
Yes. All right. And I'll speak for the club that we're here for you during your term, and hope to have many more fruitful discussions. So with that, I'm going to close the meeting and wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. And we have our next meeting in December. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks, everyone. Great.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.